Hi everyone, welcome back to the Pro MMA Betting Podcast. As always, quick recap on how we done at the weekend. So, profitable weekend for Pro MMA Betting. We won just over 2 units profit overall on pre-bets. Live betting, we actually, on the UFC, we lost just under a unit's profit. Bobby Moffett deciding to go for the submission with a couple of minutes left of round 3, as opposed to maintaining top position. Cost us profit on live betting on the night, but very small loss. There was boxing before the UFC where we actually made around 2 units profit. So overall on live betting we were up just over a unit, and as I said, for the pre-betting up over 2 units. So across the UFC events so far this year, we are 8-1 on pre-betting events. We've only lost on one event. That was the unfortunate Tim Means loss, where he looked in complete control and just got caught by a big shot. So disappointing loss, but I'd still have taken this before the start of the year. 8-1, really happy with how that's going. If you bet £100 per unit or $100 per unit this year with Pro MMA Betting, you would be £5,300 or dollars in profit. So we've had an amazing start to the year, thanks to everyone's support, everyone that listens to this channel, all the members that have signed up. Things are going really, really well, so hopefully we can keep this momentum going. And we're actually going to move on to looking at this week's UFC card. This is UFC Philly, UFC Philadelphia. It's a really tough card for betting. I've not had a quick look over all the other betting cards for this year, but off the top of my head, I think this is probably, for me anyway, the toughest UFC of the year for betting so far. So we'll dive into it, but yeah, I'm not in love with this card for betting. Just a reminder, you can check out membership packages at prommmabetting.com. Give me a follow on Twitter at prommmabetting. I always post my bet slips after the event. You can see that I am back in the recommended picks that I'm sending out to members, and you can see the stakes that I'm risking as well. And also, please hit the subscribe button on this YouTube channel. Trying to get the subscribers up to 400. We're nearly there, so if you like what you hear, please hit the subscribe button. We went 7-4 on picks overall for the UFC card just gone, so still not had a losing card on picks, so touch wood I can keep that going here. But as I say, this is a tough card for betting. I don't like it at all, so we'll see what we can do. But if we jump straight in, we start at the men's bantamweight division, £135. Alex Perez taking on Mark De La Rosa. I think this is Perez's first fight at bantamweight in the UFC. He's been campaigning in the flyweight division, but I just think with the uncertainty with regards to if that division's continuing or not, he's decided to make the move up. Maybe long term it was the plan anyway. I know that he cuts a tremendous amount of weight to make the flyweight division. I think when he rehydrates, he gets back up to about £145 by fight night from cutting down to £125, and you can see in there he's a very big flyweight, very thick. So moving up to 135, so he's looked good so far, but this may even help him. Saw him on the Contender Series run through Kevin Gray, made his debut against Carl-Jean de Thomas, run through him, second round Darce choke. Eric Shelton, he completely shut down and controlled for 3 rounds. Jose Torres, he blew away on the feet, and then he's coming off the knockout loss to Joseph Benavidez. Kind of a bit of a controversial fight. The referee stepped in, then he stepped away. Luckily for Benavidez, he managed to get the second stoppage, but there was a head clash initially that seemed to lead to Perez's downfall. So he's coming off that loss to Benavidez, but prior to that he looked very solid. His stand-up's okay. He's got a fair bit of power. It seems he's prepared to swing in the pocket with you and use that physicality. That's how he blew through Jose Torres. But he's got a very strong wrestling game, good top control. You can see evidence of that in the Eric Shelton fight. Managed to mix in his wrestling, just completely control Shelton on the mat, and whenever Shelton shot, just shut the takedown down, basically force Shelton to pull guard and just dominate the grappling. He's got a dangerous series of front chokes. He Darce choked Carl-Jean de Thomas, and he anaconda Kevin Gray, so you've got to be careful shooting on him, and you're takedown attempts being stuffed. So he's looked very solid, Alex Perez. I've been pretty impressed by him. Intrigued to see him here at 135. Mark De La Rosa took his UFC debut against Tim Elliott on, it was very short notice. Got completely out-grappled in that fight by Tim Elliott and ultimately submitted by an anaconda choke, funnily enough, in the second round. Since then though, he's come back. He beat Elias Garcia, pretty comfortable victory for him there, and he's coming off a split decision win over Joby Sanchez. Mark De La Rosa is the partner of Montana De La Rosa. He's a black belt in BJJ, mixes up some of his training with Factory X. I don't think he's been there for this camp from looking on his Instagram, but his stand-up's decent. He's comfortable trading in the pocket. He will be aggressive to try and back you up, try and look for those takedowns. I'm just not sure how physical he is. I think he is a flyweight. I think this is his second fight at 135 in the UFC, but he's definitely a smaller bantamweight, so that is going to catch up with him, and he is taking on someone here who is very physical. I think on the feet it could be fairly competitive. I think if it stays on the feet, it would be a competitive fight. I don't know if Perez's physicality and power will shine through, but as I say, De La Rosa does seem pretty comfortable trading in the pocket. I see the difference probably being Perez's wrestling and his top control. As I said, Tim Elliott, I know it was short notice, but still I didn't like how Tim Elliott was just able to take him down and absolutely dominated him on the mat. And Perez is very solid from top. We saw that with Shelton. No one's really shut Shelton down like that before. So I think on the feet it's competitive, but I think the difference here will be Perez's wrestling and his ability to maintain top position and keep De La Rosa down. So I'm going to go with Perez here to win, probably by a decision, but De La Rosa does need to be careful with his, if he does decide to try and take this to the mat, he's got to be very careful of Perez's front series of headlocks, and especially if he's trying to get back to his feet. He's got to be very careful how he does that and doesn't give his neck to Perez. Perez trains with Colin Oyama, so he's coming from a good camp, got good training partners down there. We just saw Vera, impressive win at the weekend, so I think Perez keeps the wins coming for the camp, and I think he's going to win a decision here and get back in the win column after the Joseph Benavidez fight. I'm not sure where on the card this fight is going, but we do have Jessica Aguilar stepping in as a late notice replacement, taking on Marina Rodriguez, who is coming off her UFC debut where she had a draw with Randa Marcos. I was actually fairly impressed with Marina. I like her stand up. She's very aggressive, she's pretty physical. She got dominated in round 1, taken down. She got taken down a couple of times in round 3, but she managed to get back to her feet really quick. Both times she pushed off the cage with her feet to basically roll and get herself back to her feet. Worked over Marcos on the feet. Very aggressive for a lady. She also fought on the Contender Series, absolutely blew the woman away and actually made the woman quit on her feet. It was a pretty impressive display of aggressiveness and punching power for a lady. Jessica Aguilar's taking this on about a week's notice. She's nearly 37 now, trains at American Top Team, but she's suffered a lot of injuries. She's actually, this will be her third fight in the space of quite a short amount of time for her, considering how inactive she was for a large period of time. But she's lost 3 of her last 4. She's lost to decent girls: Gadella, Casey, Weili Zhang. Got a decision win over Jodie Esquibel, sandwiched in between. But yeah, the injuries I think have caught up with her. She's pretty small for 115 now. Her days of kind of being the top girl in the division's moved on a lot. The ladies are a lot more physical now. She is, she could, I haven't checked through, but I'm sure she's fought at atom weight before, and I think she could still make that weight. It's going to be a big size disadvantage for her here. She's going to want to try and get Marina down to the mat, which, it isn't beyond the realm of a possibility. She was able to take Courtney Casey down a number of times off of caught kicks, and Marina does throw a lot of kicks, but Courtney Casey's takedown defence and balance is absolutely atrocious. I don't think Marina's going to go down as easy. We did see Randa hit 3 takedowns, but I do hold Randa's wrestling offence in higher regard than I do Jessica Aguilar's. She couldn't get Jodie Esquivel down. She did come close in the first round. She got her kind of down to her bum a few times, but Esquivel actually showed how well schooled she is. She managed to get back up to her feet. I just don't know if she's going to have any joy getting Marina down. I mean, if she does, can she keep her down? Randa Marcos did dominate the first round, kept her down the whole round, had man and side control. She did get up twice in round 3 from pushing off the fence, but I mean, I imagine the takedowns are going to be on the fence. Just based on how Aguilar fights now, her takedown attempts do seem to be from the clinch position. I don't see her hitting a takedown in the middle of the mat unless she's able to catch a kick. In that case, Marina might be a turtle off of her back where there's no fence, and she might be stuck there. So there is a path possibly there for Aguilar, but I have to go with Marina. She's a younger fighter in her prime. She's got a big stand-up advantage. She's just got to be careful with her kicks. Her kicks are a lot quicker than Courtney Casey's as well. They are going to be quicker to catch, and I think her balance is better. I think anyone's balance is better than Courtney Casey. So I think this could be a tough fight for Aguilar. The lines have just come out for this. Rodriguez is -335. As much as I want to fade Aguilar, I can't get in line with that price. Women's MMA, it's always a risky business, and if you're betting a big favourite, you need to be pretty confident. And back of my mind, I'm a little bit worried about the takedowns, and if Marina can get back to her feet if she does get taken down. But I am picking her here. I think she is going to win a decision. Aguilar's tough. I just think she's going to get beaten up on the feet, and I think the takedowns are probably going to be fairly hard to come by. So I'm going to go Marina decision, but I can't get on board with that price of -335 for women's MMA. And Marina, there are still some question marks. I do want to see how her takedown defense does look here, and kind of how she is from the bottom. Is she going to get stuck there if she doesn't have the fence to push off of? So a few question marks, but Marina is the right side. But as I say, at that price, I can't bet her. I was expecting her to be maybe around -250. I mean, maybe that's where it'll settle, but at the moment there's definitely no way I can get on board with that price. Women's flyweight division next. We've got the debuting Sabina Mazo taking on Marina Moroz. Very similar in frame, these two ladies, both 5'7", similar reach. Sabina has an inch reach advantage, I believe. They're both orthodox. Sabina a lot younger, 6 years younger. I think she's about 21 years of age. She's making her UFC debut here. Moroz has been in the UFC for a while now. We saw her debut against Joanne Calderwood. Quick armbar victory for her. Lost to Valerie Letourneau. Beat Christina Stanikou and Danielle Taylor. Losses to Carla Esparza. And last time out, Angela Hill in a very close fight. Sabina Mazo's been plying her trade on the LFA circuit. She trains out of King's MMA. Got a fair bit of hype. She's got 2 nasty head kick wins in LFA against Lindsay Williams and Jamie Thornton. Since then, she's won 2 5-round. I think they were both 5-round decision wins. It's a tough fight to get a full read on. I didn't watch. Well, I struggled to find either of Sabina's last 2 fights. I know one of them is available, but to be honest, I couldn't really be bothered to go back and find it when I found out one was available. I watched both her head kick wins, and yeah, very impressive head kick KO wins, but up until the actual head kicks landed, I wasn't overly impressed. I mean, the last fight I saw of hers it's about 18 months ago, so there could be a lot of improvement there. I'm not sure if there is. I did watch the highlights of her. I think it was her last fight, and I mean, it looked like she was fighting a soccer mum, to be honest with you. It was very brief highlights, but I'd expect her to get someone like that out of there. I know it's women's MMA and they're not the biggest finishers, but she had 5 rounds to do it, and the lady kind of hung tough for 5 rounds. So I don't know. I just wasn't, the first 2 fights I watched, I wasn't, you know, great timing on the head kicks. But if you're head kick or bust, then you're not going to get a lot of wins inside the distance in the UFC. But I just wasn't impressed by her stand up greatly. You know, outside of the head kick, she didn't look like I was kind of hoping she was going to. Marina is battle tested. We've seen her in there in the UFC a number of times. There's no way I can get behind. It's dropped a little bit actually. Last time I looked, Sabina was -185. She's -170 now. I wouldn't be surprised to see that price come in during the week. I mean, as I say, I've not watched Sabina's last 2 fights. I haven't watched much tape on Moroz, but I do remember Moroz. She's competent. She trains at ATT. I think this probably should be a pick-em fight. This is definitely going to be a stand-up fight for 3 rounds. I'm pretty confident of that. I think it's going to be a close fight. I don't see either of them running away with it unless Mazo can land that head kick. I mean, as a better, it's a pass fight for me, but you know, I do pick winners on pretty much all the fights. So as a better, I'd bet Moroz here +150. I don't agree with that line at all. I'm not buying the Sabina hype. She may come in and look amazing, but I think this is going to be a close competitive fight. So I think the value's on Moroz. I've picked Moroz decision +150, but as a better, it's a hard fight to get a full gauge on, so I would avoid it. But the pick is Moroz to win a decision here and spoil the debut of the of Sabina Mazo, who has a bit of hype coming into this, and the line shows the hype. Men's bantamweight division next, we've got Ray Borg taking on Phillips. The returning Ray Borg, he's been out since the title shot against Demetrius Johnson. He's had a lot of issues going on with his little boy, which I hope are now resolved. It's good to see Borg back. Moving up to bantamweight here, as we know, he's always had troubles making 125, and I guess with the uncertainty around the flyweight division, he's just decided to make the move up. I mean, he's only a young guy, so you know, in 18 months his frame could have filled a bit. Maybe the cut, he thought it's just going to get harder and harder, but he's only 5'4", so really I think truly he is a flyweight, and I'm not sure how he's going to do long term in the bantamweight division, but let's see. He's given up a lot of size here. Phillips has fought at 145 on the Ultimate Fighter. He's a lot taller. There's about 4-inch reach advantage. I'm just on UFCstats.com. It hasn't got Phillips's reach, but I did find it out earlier in the week. I can't remember what the difference is, but I'm pretty sure it's quite a significant reach advantage for Phillips. So it's going to be good to see Ray Borg back. He's probably got a winnable fight here, but from a betting perspective, he's -450, which is something I definitely can't get on board with. Last saw him against DJ, so he's been out for about 18 months. As I said, he's had a lot of problems at home. I hope they're resolved now, but I don't know kind of how much he's been training in that time due to the issues he's had. So there are a few question marks. He's moving up to bantamweight here. He is giving up a good bit of size advantage to Phillips. Now, Ray's normally his strategy is to use his wrestling, use his excellent scrambling and top control and submission skills. I mean, he beat Formiga, very impressive win. It's mostly a stand-up fight, but he actually stole round 3 by getting out of Formiga's back control, taking top control, and actually landing some really good ground and pound on Formiga, and that was in Brazil as well. He managed to get that decision, so that was an impressive victory. We saw him struggle against Justin Scoggins, couldn't get the fight to the feet, which is easily outstruck by Justin, but apart from that, he's pretty much been able to wrestle everyone, and of course DJ couldn't get anything going against, but everyone else pretty much he's been able to use his wrestling and excellent grappling. As I said, the Formiga fight was a stand-up fight, competitive on the feet. Ray was definitely showing improvements on the feet, and then he managed to nick that third round by getting out of the back control and raining some heavy level from top. And his debut all the way back in 2014 against Dustin Ortiz, very, very close fight, very scramble heavy fight, entertaining grapple fest, could have gone either way, really, really close fight that was. Phillips, he's brown belt in BJJ. I think he won the the World Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu Championships at blue belt level a few years ago. He's only 23, trains out of the MMA lab. We saw him on the Ultimate Fighter. He gave Brad Katona a decent fight. He lost it says a majority decision, but I think Brad kind of clearly won that fight. I don't really see why that was a majority. Brad managed to get the calf kicks going, but I mean, Kai looked pretty big in that fight. I mean, that was at 145, so he's definitely going to have some size on Ray Borg. I actually managed to find his fight against Victor Henry as well, where he lost a split decision. He gassed really badly in that fight against Victor Henry. Started out strong in round 1, but just faded as the fight went on. So that was only back in October as well. This was only like 5 or 6 months ago. He's got a win in February, a quick head kick win over a guy in LFA. Look, I have to pick Ray Borg here. I think he will get his wrestling going. I think there could be some problems maybe initially because of the size he's giving up, both physically and in terms of the strength maybe that he might encounter with Phillips. He is a big guy. He's also got reach and height leverages over Ray Borg, so I don't know, maybe it'll take a little while for Ray to start getting his takedowns going. I don't think he's going to want to mess around on the feet here. He's just giving up too much in height and reach. Not sure how much joy he'd have on the feet. His stand-up was improving, but I think he's going to go to what he knows best here, and I think he's going to try and get his grappling going against this guy. I don't see why he can't get the wrestling going. As he moves up, I think he may start to struggle with the physicality of these guys, but I still think Phillips is still a bit too green. I mean, it's only 6 months ago he lost a split decision to Victor Henry, really slowed down in that fight. I imagine Ray Borg's going to set a high pace like he always does. I just see him draining Phillips as the fight goes on. I think Borg will probably win a decision here. The problem I have though is the price is currently Borg's minus 450. It's really steep. I can't get behind that price for Ray Borg here because there are some uncertainties. Moving up a weight division, been out 18 months. He's dealing with a style type he's never dealt with before in terms of the height and reach that he's giving up. Much bigger guy than he's used to facing. I do expect him to come through this test and probably to do it quite comprehensively. But I expect Kyler to be making improvements. He is at the MMA lab. He's young, 23. I mean, that fight 6 months ago, these young guys, some of them in 6 months can make huge leaps. So it could end up being a lot closer than I think it might be. And the minus 450 price tag might not look justified at all. But yeah, I just can't get behind Borg at that price. But I do expect Borg to win a decision here. I think his pace will be too much. I think Phillips will slow down. And as a bettor as well, I don't like betting on someone if I'm relying on their opponent gassing. If Phillips doesn't gas and he can maintain a high pace here for 3 rounds, I mean, this could be a competitive fight, potentially. And relying on someone gassing at minus 450 is just not a clever idea as well. So it's definitely a pass fight for me, but I do expect Ray Borg to get the job done here, but I definitely don't like the price. Up to the men's middleweight division now. Kevin Holland taking on Gerald Meerschaert. Kevin's got a couple of inches of height, 6'3" to 6'1". He's got 4-inch reach advantage. Orthodox stance for Kevin. Gerald fights southpaw. Kevin's 5 years younger. Kevin's significant strikes landed per minute up over 5. Gerald is about 3.5. Kevin absorbs just over 3. Gerald is up at over 4. Kevin averages just under 2 takedowns per 15 minutes. Gerald is up at just over 2.5. Kevin takedown accuracy 50%, Gerald 37%, and they're both around 50% for takedown defense. Kevin Holland's a hard guy for me to get a full read on because of his style in the cage. He can just be very lackadaisical in there, kind of messes around. He's just a hard guy to trust as a bettor. We saw him on the Contender Series against Will Santiago. It wasn't an impressive performance there. Lost to Thiago Santos. He showed that he's a tough guy. He went free with Thiago, and you know, survived some adversity in that fight, and then he's coming off a win over John Phillips. Managed to get the late submission win, but I mean, it wasn't an overly impressive performance from Kevin. Now he's taking on Gerald Meerschaert, who has been in the UFC for a while now. They've got a common opponent in Thiago Santos. Thiago bludgeoned Meerschaert into a second round stoppage win from ground and pound. We saw him beat Eric Spicely, and showed a real good heart against Oscar Piechota. Was in big trouble in the first round, but Oscar blew his wad trying to finish him, and he come back and actually got the round 2 stoppage over Oscar. And he's coming off a quick loss to Jack Hermansson, who managed to choke him out in the first round. Jack just come in, took him down, just dominated the grappling, and managed to get that submission win. I'm going to go Kevin Holland here. Gerald Meerschaert, I mean, he's not the greatest fighter. I mean, if you look at his UFC career so far, Ryan James quickly took him down, pulled out a nice armbar. Fight before that, he dominated Joe Gigliotti, who's just not UFC material. Dominated by Thiago Santos and stopped in round 2. Eric Spicely, nice body kick KO in the second round, but he got pretty much dominated in the first round by Spicely with the grappling. Same thing happened with Oscar Piechota, but both of them just kind of slowed down, especially Oscar in the second round. He managed to kind of come from behind victories in both them fights, particularly the Oscar fight where he was in a lot of trouble in round 1, and then he's coming off the loss to Jack Hermansson. I'd just like to see Kevin be a bit more, I don't know, just zoned in there, stop kind of pissing around, just go in and mean serious business. I think he is going to get the victory here. I think he'll probably win a decision. Gerald's a tough guy. He's hard to finish. I mean, Thiago Santos finished him, but Holland doesn't bring that heat, and got submitted by Hermansson, who looked really good in that fight. But I just, yeah, it's hard to trust Holland though. I don't think I can get behind him as a better, not in this spot. His price here is -230. I just need to see him put a bit more application to his craft and knuckle down in there and kind of stop making stupid decisions, show some solid fight IQ. So I am going to go him. I think his ceiling is higher than Gerald's. Gerald, you know, he trains out of a good camp. He's at Rufus Sport, but I think he is who he is now. I think he's a lower level UFC guy, and I'm not quite sure where to peg Kevin Holland yet. So I'm gonna go with Holland here to win a decision victory. But if you're betting him, you're gonna have to be prepared for some moments of frustration throughout the fight. I mean, it would not shock me if he done some stupid stuff and ended up throwing the fight away, but I think overall he's the better fighter, and I do expect him to get the victory here by decision. I think he can shut down Gerald being able to get his grappling offence going, and I think he can win this fight on the feet. But he's a hard man to trust, so if you're betting him, good luck, but I'd probably recommend, especially at that price, that it's a fight you avoid. Men's featherweight division next, we've got Enrique Barzola taking on Kevin Aguilar. A really interesting fight this. I'm looking forward to this one. Barzola has been pretty impressive in his UFC run so far. He trains at American Top Team. He uses a real stifling wrestling approach. He's got real solid takedowns. Has Barzola. His takedowns per 15 minutes, he averages 6 takedowns per 15 minutes, and he's got 52% takedown accuracy, which is really impressive, really high percentages there. I mean, you can look at the competition he's faced and say he's had an easy run, and as he steps up, those percentages will drop off, which they will. But is Aguilar above the level of competition he's faced so far? Maybe slightly. Maybe this is a slight step up, but I wouldn't say that Aguilar's, I mean, he's definitely not top 10, not yet anyway. Let's see how he goes, Aguilar. It's hard to get a kind of full read yet on how well he's going to do, but Barzola will bring a high pace. He's happy to kind of keep coming at you. He'll close the distance with his strikes so that he can set up those takedowns. The one weakness he does have in regards to his wrestling and grappling is his top control is terrible. Really struggles to keep people on the mat, and he just isn't really a submission threat when you're trying to work back to your feet. Like, everyone gives their back up, and I think in all the fights I watched, he took the back of someone like on 1 or 2 occasions, and it's a common get up that people use against him, is giving their back up, but there just seems to be little in the way of a submission threat. So he will hit takedowns, but the guys are going to keep getting back to their feet, and you know, he's okay on the feet, Barzola. He's got a nice head kick, but he's definitely hittable, especially when he's trying to close that gap to hit those takedowns. He's shown a pretty solid chin. He did get dropped by Benitez right at the end of the 3rd round, just on the buzzer. First time we've really seen him hurt, and he took some heavy kicks off Benitez, who's got some of the best kicks in the division. So he's definitely a tough guy, grindy style. But I do give Aguilar the advantage on the feet here. Aguilar has some serious power in his hands. I watched him absolutely ice Damon Jackson in the 3rd round, just completely slept him. He knocked out Fan Lee in LFA as well, and he had Rick Glenn in trouble in his UFC debut, and Rick Glenn's a tough man, so this guy's definitely got some serious power. On the feet, I give him the advantage purely based on his power. I think the shots he's landing are going to look far more significant and eye-catching to what Barzola lands on the feet. The question on this fight is, A, can Barzola take the power shots that he does get hit with, and B, can he do enough with his wrestling and top control to outweigh the significant strikes that Aguilar will land. I mean, I expect, we have seen in fights that Aguilar can get taken down, he can get held down, but ultimately he does work his way back to his feet, so I can't see Barzola being able to keep Aguilar down for extended periods. I think he's going to get back to his feet, but can he do enough on the feet to outweigh those takedowns and top control and time spent held and clinched against the fence to win a decision if he can't stop Barzola? I think if this fight goes to a decision, Barzola's probably going to get it just from the weight of his constant takedown offense, hitting constant takedowns. But I did bet Barzola against Matt Bessette, and it's the only fight where he did lean on his wrestling, but just not as heavily as he had other fights. So that fight's always in the back of my mind now when I'm thinking about betting Barzola, because he did make me sweat in that fight, and I was just worried, is this going to be one where he comes out and kind of thinks he's a striker again and doesn't go to his wrestling as much, because he doesn't want to be hanging around on the feet with this guy, especially in that range where Aguilar can land, because Barzola kind of will come in with his hands down. He is there to be hit, and I can see him getting cracked in this fight, but I'm going to go with Barzola to win a decision. But I'm not comfortable betting him here, because I think he's going to get hit, and even though he's going to hit takedowns, he will get Aguilar down. As per all his fights, I just don't think he's going to have the biggest joy keeping Aguilar on the mat, so there is going to be opportunity for Aguilar to land something. But having said that, with the big takedown threat from Barzola, will it make Aguilar hesitant? If Aguilar can get back to his feet pretty easily, then it's less likely to make him hesitant with his hands, but if he does end up spending some time on his back, you could see it make him hesitant, so there's that to consider as well. The line at the moment, I think it's probably about right. We've got Barzola as a -125 favourite, so ever so slight favourite. I'm going to pick him to win a decision through his grinding style with just landing enough takedowns, but I would not be shocked if he gets knocked out here. He is going to get hit. He has shown he's tough in the past, but Aguilar's the hardest hitter he's faced. Man's definitely got power, especially for a featherweight, so Barzola needs to be respectful, doesn't want to hang around in the pocket. If he comes into the pocket, he needs to be going for those takedowns straight away, as opposed to kind of messing around and trading with this guy. So he needs to fight smart here, but I think he will come in well game planned. He's at American Top Team. I think he's going to win a competitive decision, but there will be, I can see there being points of worry where Aguilar manages to land some big shots. And as I say, if he can't keep the top control for long, and Aguilar manages to land some eye-catching shots, he could steal rounds here. So it's a very interesting fight, but I'm going to go with Barzola to win a decision, but it's not a confident prediction. Men's lightweight division, we've got Ross Pearson taking on Desmond Green. Desmond's got a 4-inch reach advantage, 2-inch height advantage. Strikes landed per minute, they're both fairly similar. Ross at over 3.5, Desmond just over 3. Strikes absorbed, Ross is over 4, just over 4, Desmond's at 2. Takedown average per 15 minutes, Ross is 0.75, Desmond bang on 1. Takedown defense, both in the 70% range, but this is going to be probably a stand-up fight, I think. Des is a really solid wrestler. We saw him have wrestling success against Prazeres early on in the fight. He can definitely take Ross down. Just not sure if he can keep Ross down. Ross has always shown solid get-ups, and from what we've seen of Desmond, his top control isn't the best, so I'm not sure he can keep Ross down here. I think he will mix his wrestling in. I think it'd be silly not to, because it's going to score points for him, and his wrestling is very good, so he can definitely take Ross down, but just not sure if he can keep him down. So I do actually see this fight playing out more on the feet than anywhere else, and I do give Desmond the advantage on the feet. I think he is going to outstrike Ross. He's got that range. Ross is definitely a fighter on the downside of his career. He's had he's got a 20-15 record. You know, he's kind of getting up for trading a win for a loss kind of territory now. He's lost 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. He's lost 5 of his last 6. Coming off a tough fight with John Makdessi, he took a bit of a beating in that fight. I mean, Makdessi doesn't have the best power, probably saved him there, but his face was a mess at the end of it. Fight before that against Hirota, I remember I bet Ross in that fight. Small, and yeah, I wasn't impressed. It was a close fight. He took a brutal knockout loss to Dan Hooker prior to that. And yeah, I mean, he's, in terms of damage, he's probably fairly safe here. Desmond Green isn't the biggest puncher. He's probably going to go 3 rounds. Ross will probably be comfortable, kind of letting all these tools go here, and not kind of being too worried about being hit by Des Green or being knocked out. But I just think he's pretty predictable, Ross. You know what's coming from him with his stand-up now. Loves that left hook, rolling left hook. Hasn't really evolved much, and he's not going to now. He's 34 years of age. He's definitely seen his best days. Des' stand-up's definitely improved. He's been a little bit unlucky in his UFC career. Yeah, it struck Josh Emmett, took a decision over him. I think he could have got the Kabalov decision. Prazeres, he fought Prazeres in Brazil. Prazeres missed weight by a mile, and he started off well in that fight, but ultimately the size was just too much. He slowed down. He outstruck Gleison Tibau for 3 rounds. Tibau coming back off the drug suspension, definitely not the same fighter he was. And then he's coming off a unanimous decision loss to Mairbek Taisumov in a fight that was very competitive. I had Taisumov in that fight, and I remember I was pretty worried throughout that fight. It was a lot closer than I expected it to be. So he's definitely improved on the feet, Desmond, and he does have the wrestling to fall back on as well. So will the wrestling threat make Ross hesitant? There's that potential as well. I just don't think Desmond has the best top control though. I think Ross will be able to get up fairly easy. So I don't think I expect Ross to be hesitant here. I think Des will outstrike him to a decision win. But again, the price on Des, I just can't get behind. -440 for Desmond Green. If he had solid top control, then maybe it would be justified, but his top control isn't great. as I keep saying, I think this fight is going to mainly play out on the feet, and I think Desmond will outstrike Ross, but I definitely don't think he's going to run away with it. And minus 440, you want to be absolutely dominating the boy if you're going to be betting that kind of line. I can see it being competitive on the feet, you know, in spurts. I think, and you know, you get, who knows, you get a dodgy judge or two, decision could go against you, because I don't think Green's going to come out and school him on the feet here. I think it will be competitive, but I just think Green will do enough to win the decision over 3 rounds. So I can't recommend anyone getting behind Green at minus 440 or even parlaying him, as much as I think Ross is on the downside. And Ross loses this fight, I imagine he's going to get cut. The UFC have been pretty generous with him, but I can't imagine them keeping him if he gets cut. And I imagine Ross would retire if he gets cut. I hope he does. I wouldn't want to see him go somewhere else. He's taken a fair bit of damage in recent years. I think it would be time. I think it is kind of getting time for him to hang them up. But it's going to be interesting to see how much Des tries to wrestle here and how content he is to stand with Ross. Because to be fair to Des, he's had tough opponents to wrestle so far. Josh Emmett's not an easy guy to take down and wrestle. Kabilov isn't. Prazeres isn't. T-Bow isn't. And neither's Tysonov. So Ross, in sense of him using his wrestling, is probably his easiest opponent to date. So it's going to be interesting to see how much he falls back on his wrestling here, and to get a full gauge on his top control. Because, like I said, I'm saying his top control is not great, but he's faced tough guys to keep on the mat. So let's see. Maybe against someone like Ross, it might be better. But Ross has historically always shown pretty solid get-ups, to be fair to him. So I do see it being on the feet mainly. I do see Des winning the decision, but I definitely can't get behind minus 440 for Desmond Green here. I don't think he's going to stop Ross. In fact, I'm pretty sure he won't. So, you know, you're probably looking at one path to victory for Des, which is a decision. So minus 440, no thanks. But I do pick Green to win a decision. So onto the main card now. We've got Sheymon Moraes taking on Sodiq Yusuff. I was fairly surprised to see the price on this. Sodiq is minus 175, so there's obviously a lot of hype there. Sheymon Moraes is constantly underrated, plus 155. Personally, I think this should be a pick'em line. I'll be surprised if the line doesn't close closer by fight night. Now, Sodiq, he looks very impressive. Don't get me wrong. Trays out of the Lloyd Irvine camp. I used him in I think it was a double in his last fight against the Australian guy, who he just absolutely blew away. He looked very good on the Contender Series against Mike Davis. Looked very, very fundamentally sound on the feet. But you know, how good is Mike Davis? That's the question you need to ask. You know, it's got to be careful overrating these guys. I went back and watched his fight with Kowalkiewicz, where he kind of mainly cage grinded Kowalkiewicz in that fight, but that's a couple of years ago now. He's obviously evolved as a fighter since. Suffered a loss on Titan to Louis Gomez, and it was kind of a bit worrying how easily he got shut down in that fight. Now, I'm not going to say he's chinny, it's far too early to say that, but he did go lights out pretty easily in that fight. So, you know, was it a prospect loss? Maybe. It was just over a year ago. He's rebounded with 3 impressive as hell wins. You couldn't really be more impressive in the 3 fights he's had since. But Sheymon Moraes is constantly underrated. He's 11-2. He's only 2 losses in his career to Zabit Magomed Sharapov and to Marlon Moraes. Now, you're talking about 2 absolute beasts that have beaten him. He's got wins over ex-UFC veteran Robbie Peralta, stopped him in the 2nd round. I mean, he's decisioned Louis Palomino, who, well, not the best fighter in the world. He's a decent test for anyone, and he's very tough. He beat Matt Sales in his 2nd fight in the UFC. Now, Matt Sales has got solid stand-up, looks like a decent prospect himself. Easily took the first 2 rounds off Matt. He did slow down and lose round 3, and he's coming off a split decision win over Julio Arce, where he was a big underdog in that fight as well, but really took it to Arce and put him in big trouble. early in that fight. So I say did come back. So the one thing with Moraes is he's cardio. Zabit submitted him in round 3. Matt Sales won round 3. And he lost round 3 to Arce as well. So it does definitely seem to be a little bit of a conditioning issue here. And actually Marlon Moraes stopped him in round 3 as well. So he definitely seems to slow down in fights. And round 3 seems to be a round rather that he really struggles to win. So that is something to really bear in mind with Sodiq. You know, if he's going to be dropping round 3, then he has to win the first 2 rounds. So this is a hard fight to get a full read on, because I just don't know where Sodiq's ceiling is. This is definitely a step up for him. Definitely the toughest fight of his career. And Moraes just is constantly underrated. I don't understand the betting line. I think it definitely should be a pick-em fight. So as a bettor, I've always got to go where I think there's value. I'm not saying I'm betting Sheymon Moraes here, but at plus 155, I think the value's on him. He's been in there with the best of the best. He's coming off a couple of solid wins in the UFC, and it's a big step up for Sodiq. So you've got to be very, very careful when you're betting these. I'm not saying he's a hype job in the sense that he's not going to live up to the hype, but you know, you see so many fighters that are hyped way too early in their careers with these betting lines. So I can't get behind Sodiq as a minus 175 favourite here when he's taken a huge step up in competition. He has looked very good. I hope he does live up to the hype, because he's going to be a very exciting fighter. But big step up in competition here. So I'm going to pick Moraes probably to nick a competitive decision here. Plus 155, I think the value's with him. Cardio is a concern in round 3 for Sheymon, because you know, if you go into any fight, it's 1-1 going into round 3, then you've got to favour the opponent probably, unless they're looking really gassed themselves. So I think this is going to be a very interesting fight. It's going to give us much better idea on Sodiq's ceiling. But I just think Moraes is just constantly underrated. So I think he can come through as an underdog again here. So I think at the minute the value's on him, and I'll be surprised if this line doesn't close a lot closer by fight night. So I'm going to pick Sodiq to win a decision. Now we've got the light heavyweight division next. Everyone's favourite Scottish fighter Paul Craig taking on Kennedy and Nzechukwu. Hard fight to get a read on. You know, like a lot of this card, as I said, is a tough card for betting, and this one's another one that it's just tough fight to get a read on. I definitely don't like the line on Kennedy. He's a minus 240 favourite. I honestly don't think Paul Craig's quite as bad as people make him out to be. He's don't get me wrong, he's definitely got holes in his game, but he's not a terrible fighter. His UFC, let's have a look at his UFC record. So he beat Frankenstein, armbarred him in the 2nd round. Tyson Pedro took him out easily, so did Khalil Roundtree. Magomed Ankalev was going to win a clear decision. It tapped him at the end of the 3rd round. And the Jimmy Crute fight was, I mean, that was a competitive fight. It was 1-1 going into round 3. Craig slowed down in that fight, but he was hitting some decent takedowns on Crute. He kept getting reversed from top position though, which you just can't let that happen at this level. He shouldn't be getting reversed when he's got top control. But he's taken on a, you know, he's faced decent fighters though. You know, there's a lot of hype with Jimmy Crute. Ankalev's a beast. Roundtree, I mean, he has his limitations, but if you can't get him to the floor, you're in peril. Tyson Pedro was a, you know, bit of a hype job. He's coming off a loss, which was needed to slow down the hype, but he's still a solid fighter, and he stopped Luis Enrique, which a lot of guys struggled to do. So, you know, it was a fairly impressive submission win, and he beat Cole Moore on the, I mean, Cole Moore I think is coming off a bad loss himself, but it's still a decent kind of win on the regional kind of domestic scene. Kennedy's very, very raw. Now, this is a big step up in competition for Kennedy, We saw him in a Contender Series about 18 months ago. He won a split decision over Anton Berzon. Looked very raw in that fight, to be fair. He's beaten a couple of absolute bums since then, and then he took on Dennis Bryant in the Contender Series back in August, but Dennis Bryant's not a good fighter. You could see just from the minute and a half the fight landed that this guy, you know, really shouldn't have been in there with him. So last time we really saw Kennedy, his full game was in that split decision win. It's been 18 months. Athletically, he's got a great frame for the division. He's very long. He's got crazy reach. Very good athlete. He's young. He's only 26. He trains at Fortis. Very good MMA gym. You've got to imagine in that 18-month period that this guy's made some big improvements in his game. But he shouldn't be minus 240. That line's pretty ridiculous. It's just whether you can bring yourself to bet Paul Craig as a better. Now, obviously, I do not recommend a big bet on Paul Craig. But plus 200, there is some value there, I think. But it's a pass fight for me because I've just got no idea what kind of improvements Kennedy has made. I'm going to assume he has made some big leaps. Paul Craig's takedowns are okay, but if Kennedy's shorn up his takedown defence, and I've got a feeling he will have with the type of athlete he is, I think he's going to win, and he's probably going to knock Paul Craig out. But if Paul can get him to the mat, I mean, Paul Craig's a dangerous submission guy. It's very opportunistic on the mat for a light heavyweight. But his submissions tend to come off of his back. You know, how dangerous is he on top? He was getting reversed by Jimmy Crute from the bottom. He did get Ankalev down a couple of times. He just couldn't really secure the top position, or I think he did on one occasion, but Ankalev got up pretty quick. So, you know, if you're betting Kennedy, he could get taken down here, especially early, and I would definitely be very nervous if Kennedy was on the mat against Paul Craig. But I'm going to side with Kennedy having made improvements here. Just athletically, he looks a real good prospect in that sense. And sometimes in MMA, athleticism is all it takes. If he can keep this fight on the feet, I think he knocks Paul Craig out. So I'm going to say Kennedy to win by knockout, but I definitely wouldn't be betting Kennedy here because you're banking on improvements, which while I think they will be there, you just don't know for sure. So Kennedy knockout, but the price is off, and it's one I definitely can't get behind. And even if you like Paul Craig, it's difficult to put money on him, even as a plus 200 underdog. So tough fight for a better, but I'm going to pick Kennedy to win by knockout. Women's strawweight division next. We've got Karolina Kowalkiewicz taking on Michelle Waterson. Quick look over the stats, same height, both 5'3". Karolina's got a 2-inch reach advantage, similar age. Significant strikes landed per minute. Karolina is almost up at 6. Michelle is 3.5. Absorbed, Karolina's up at 5. Michelle's at 3. Karolina doesn't go for takedowns, averages 0.14 per 15 minutes. Michelle's up at over 2. Takedown defense, Karolina 87%. Michelle's is 62, but I'm sure Michelle's takedown defense is pretty irrelevant here. So Karolina, 12-3 professional record. She's 33 years of age now, coming off a brutal one-punch knockout loss to Jessica Andrade back in September. Before that, she was coming off 2 victories. She beat Jodie Esquibel, just bashed her for 3 rounds. Split decision over Felice Herrig, which is crazy. It wasn't a split decision. Karolina clearly won that fight for me. Done what she normally does, basically. You watch the Felice Herrig fight, it shows you what Karolina's all about. She's very good in the clinch. She's got good knees and good elbows. That's where she does her damage, basically. She's not so good at range, but she grabs that clinch, she works people over. If you want to go back further, you'll see that against Rose Namajunas, just absolutely gassed Rose with knees to the body, and won that decision. Rounds 2 and 3. I remember live betting Karolina in that fight and get a really good line on it. But yeah, really impressive win she had there, and she's got losses to Joanna Jędrzejczyk. Just got outstruck for 5 rounds. Joanna just different level. She did hurt Joanna though. I think it was round 4. Had Joanna in a bit of trouble for a moment. And Claudia Gadelha took her down quickly and subbed her. But she has generally shown pretty solid takedown defense. She showed against Felice that she was very competent in the clinch defending takedowns. Defended really well as well in her UFC debut against Randa Marcos. Randa managed to pull her down on the fence. I think it was round 2, and took her back for most of the round. But it's the only joy she really had with takedown. She did hit a takedown on her in round 3, but Karolina managed to use her momentum to actually reverse Randa and get on top. And Karolina's actually really strong on top. She showed against Randa in that round 3 how strong she was on top, and she also showed how strong she is on top against Rose in round 3, when Rose, I think she hurt Rose with a punch and Rose shot. She ended up getting on top, but you just don't see her in top position because she just never goes for takedowns. But yeah, she's definitely a well-trained fighter. The one worry I do have with Karolina is I don't think the judges particularly buy into her style, because I'm just looking at her record now. Just prior to the UFC, she had 2 split decision wins in back-to-back fights against Mizuki Inoue and Kalindra Faria. And then in the UFC, now she did get unanimous nods over Keva Clark and Randa Marcos. Rose was a split decision win, and the Felice Herrig fight was a split decision win. And I mean, I guess the Rose fight was close. I guess round 2 was, you know, maybe you could make an argument for Rose nicking round 2. Maybe I'm reading too much into these split decisions. The Felice fight definitely wasn't a split decision. I don't see how you can score that as a split decision. Felice did land some shots at range, but just the much better work came from Karolina in that fight. Michelle Waterson, the karate hottie, her stand-up pretty much revolves just around her legs. She's got a good right kick with her leg, which doesn't really have any hands. The danger with her actually is more her grappling. Her takedown percentage is pretty high. She does hit takedowns and she's got decent top control. So you have to be careful with her on the mat. I mean, it's how she beat Magana, choked her out. Paige Van Zandt choked her out. She got pretty much wrecked by Rose Namajunas. Tecia Torres just bullied her, out-physicaled her, brought a high pace, made her gas out. She did nick round 2 off Tecia though. She hit an head and arm throw on Tecia in round 2, and Tecia couldn't get back up for the rest of the round. Courtney Casey, she got a split decision win over in a fight. I don't think she won that fight at all. She was getting Courtney down. Courtney's takedown defense is absolutely garbage, as I did mention earlier in this pod. But Courtney was threatening with submission. She was landing the better strikes standing. I really disagree with that decision. I think I live bet Courtney in that fight, and I was really annoyed with that decision because I just didn't score it for Waterson at all. And then she's coming off a win over Felice Herrig, which I watched that fight twice, funnily enough, because I wondered if there was something I was missing, but I just wasn't really that impressed with that performance, really. She did hit 1 takedown on Felice in round 2, and Felice is a decent grappler. She managed to keep top control for the duration of the round. I think it was a good 3 minutes or so. So you do need to be careful with Waterson's takedowns because she's decent from top, and a lot of her takedowns are head and arm throws, which are risky as hell, but kind of seem to work for her. We did see Rose attempt one on Karolina, and Karolina, she basically did come out the back door like how you defend a head and arm throw, but she ultimately ended up on her back, but she did kind of defend it. Someone else tried one on her as well, I can't remember who it was, and she shut it down pretty easily, but it is kind of Michelle Waterson's speciality, so as risky as it is, she is pretty good at them. She did hit some different takedowns on Courtney Casey, but Courtney Casey just has no balance. I'm not reading too much into that. And against Felice, it wasn't a head and arm throw. She hit a nice trip on her. I think Felice tried to hit an outside trip, and Waterson managed to turn it into like a judo toss and got on top of Felice. So her path to victory here, I feel, is her getting Karolina down and spending 2 rounds with enough top control to steal the decision. On the feet, I mean she's got a decent right leg. It comes up very quick. There's no setup. She can bring it right up to the head. She uses it to try and stop you closing the distance, which she's going to have to do here because Karolina's going to want to get that clinch. But I do see this fight playing out, I think, similar to the Tecia Torres fight. I think Karolina will bring a high pace, which Michelle doesn't seem to cope too well with. She seems to slow down if it's a high paced fight. So I think Karolina will bring that aggression. She's going to bring that physicality as well. She's a pretty strong girl, Karolina. Now, Michelle doesn't look, especially Felice, who's very physical, she didn't look out physicaled in that fight at all. So even though she has fought atomweight before, I think she's, you know, strong enough for the weight class. But I just can see Karolina really getting her clinch going here with those knees and elbows. I think the knees will also contribute to slowing Waterson down, and I think Karolina will take a competitive decision win here. Of course, the danger being if she does end up on her back, how's she going to cope? We did see Gaethje submit her really quickly, but Gaethje's a world champion in BJJ. Felice, I think, was it the Felice fight that where she had top control, or was it the, I can't remember what fight it was. Karolina was on her back, but she threw up a nice submission attempt and reversed the position really quickly. I think it was against Felice. But ultimately, yeah, if you're backing Karolina here, you don't want to see her on her back because Michelle is pretty strong from top position. So, but yeah, I do pick Karolina here. I've got to pick against Michelle Waterson's head and arm throws and top control, even though, you know, she has done it a lot. She did get Tecia Torres down with it and win round 2 because of it. And she did hit a nice trip on Felice and keep her down for the round, and Felice is a decent grappler. So there is a path to victory for Michelle Waterson. Price for Karolina's -150. Probably fairly accurate. But Waterson just, yeah, she just has a habit of getting them takedowns, and would not be shocked if it's 1-1 going into round 3. But I do side with Karolina. I think her takedown defence is good enough generally to keep her on the feet, but the worry is one takedown and the round could be over. So it's I do definitely pick Karolina, but the thought of betting her does make me a bit nervous as well. So I expect it to be a competitive fight, and it will be interesting at range as well. I mean, if Karolina is struggling to get past the right kick that Michelle's going to keep firing at to keep her at range, who knows what's going to happen then, because Karolina isn't the best at range. If this was played at range, it's going to be very, very close on the feet. But I will side with Karolina doing what she does best and being able to get that tire plumb going, get the elbows going, get the knee strikes going. But then I do think back to a lot of split decision wins for Karolina, and, you know, judges, how do they score her fights? And Michelle, you know, nicked that decision over Courtney Casey from her top control. But I'll go with Karolina to win a decision, but it's a very interesting fight. Men's featherweight division next. I still regard these two as lightweights really, but we've got Josh Emmett taking on Michael Johnson. Quick look over the stats. Michael's 4-inch height advantage. He's got a 3-inch reach advantage. He also fights southpaw. Strikes landed per minute, significant strikes landed per minute. Michael's up at over 4, Josh almost at 4, so quite similar there. Absorbed pretty similar as well. Josh is just under 4. Michael is basically at 4. Josh averages almost 2 takedowns per 15 minutes. Michael isn't going to go for takedowns. Michael's takedown defense 77% though, pretty solid. So this is a very interesting fight. It's a hard one to call because Josh Emmett suffered horrific facial damage against Jeremy Stephens. I've not got the litany of injuries in front of me, but I read them yesterday or the day before, and oh man, his face basically was just caved in on one side. I have to imagine there's some kind of psychological worry for Josh coming back here. I mean, I'm sure he's fine to fight physically. He would have been cleared, but psychologically, I mean, it's a tough spot to come back from. There has to be some kind of doubt in your mind about kind of being hit in the face again hard. And UFC have done him no favours matching him with Michael Johnson. So I don't like to play doctor though, especially from a betting perspective. I've tried it in the past when someone's had a lot of surgeries and injuries, and you know, assuming that their performance is going to be hindered, and then they come out looking fine. So I do disregard it pretty much all the time now and don't factor it in, but it's very hard not to here. And I always remember when I bet Wonder Boy against Rory McDonald, and I just wondered psychologically how Rory would be because of his the horrific nose damage he'd suffered, and the fact of the matter is that he gets hit on that nose again, it's just going to break very easily. And I think it's already been rebroken in fights he's had in Bellator. And we saw against Wonderboy, he was very hesitant. He wasn't the same fighter, and that's Rory McDonald, who's a complete, you know, in the fighting sense, complete psychopath. Someone that, you know, is happy to embrace a war, has no fear of that. And we even see he seems a bit of a broken man. I mean, he lost his last fight, Rory, and the way he spoke was just like not the guy that we're used to hearing about, how he just didn't really want to be in there and just wasn't really up for it. So yeah, I mean, that was one case where I did fade someone psychologically, and it's tempting to fade Josh Emmett because it's just, I mean, the amount of damage he took, would you really want to be fighting again? I mean, as I say, I'm sure he would have been cleared medically, but is it the smart thing to do, and is he going to be getting kind of flashbacks as soon as he starts getting hit? That's a big question mark for me here with regards to Josh. If we kind of put that aside for a moment, Josh has, you know, he's had a fairly solid UFC run. He made his debut against John Tuck, won I don't know how that's a split decision, he clearly won that fight. He broke his finger though in round 3, and yeah, he couldn't use his hand. He was lucky that they didn't call the doctor in, because it probably would have got stopped. But yeah, he clearly outstruck John Tuck the first 2 rounds. Fight before that, it wasn't in the UFC, but he fought Christos Gagos, who a lot of you would know from the UFC. Knocked him out in the 3rd round. He had Gagos hurt badly multiple times in that fight, multiple times. Then he had a really good fight with Scott Holtzman, really entertaining. He dropped the 1st round in that fight, but came back, won the next 2. He hurt Holtzman as well in that fight. He lost the decision to Des Green, split decision loss. I think Des definitely won that fight. It was a competitive fight though, no one run away with it, and that's when he made the move down to 145. Dominant decision win over Felipe Arantes, just literally would touch Arantes and he would drop to the floor. I think it was a bit theatrical from Felipe, in all honesty. Then he had the huge knockout win over Ricardo Lamas, massive KO win, and then he had the brutal loss to Jeremy Stephens. He did drop Jeremy Stephens in round 1, but man, that was a hard loss to watch. It was just over a year ago now he had that fight. So I mean, he's a solid fighter, Josh. He trains out of Team Alpha Male. He's extremely thick for 145. He's fairly fast. He does hit with power. Does wind up a little bit with his strikes. He's physically strong. He can mix his wrestling in. Hasn't shown much in the way of kind of great top control though. He's taken on Michael Johnson here, who similar amount of fights at 145. Since he moved down, he's faced Darren Elkins. Beat Darren Elkins up in round 1, but got taken down and choked in round 2. Split decision win over Andre Fili. Close fight. outstruck Philly, but it was just the grappling where Philly was able to make that fight really, really close. And then he's coming off a win over Artem Lobov. Was 1-1 going into round 3 actually in that fight, but Lobov I think is a little bit underrated. He's not as bad as people make out. I think it's a bit like I said with Paul Craig earlier. I think he's as bad as people make out. But yeah, he won a comfortable decision win there, did Michael. But yeah, it's a hard fight to get a read on here, because part of me is just wondering if Michael is starting to slow down a little bit. And he's 32 years of age now. He's had over 30 fights, but he's had some tough fights. You know, the Nurmagomedov fight was pretty brutal, and then he had the tough Justin Gaethje fight. But he's got some great wins on his resume. It's Michael's he's a hard guy to trust. He's got a bit of a flake perception that follows him around, and you don't really want to be betting flaky fighters as a bettor. But I mean, he beat Tony Ferguson back in the day, albeit Tony broke his arm in that fight, but still he beat Tony Ferguson. He took out Danny Castillo. He knocked out a prime Gleison Tebow. Decisioned a prime Melvin Gillard. Decisioned Edson Barboza. Lost a controversial split decision to Darius that he probably should have got the nod over. Took out Poirier in round 1. And that's when he kind of hit the skid, but he did face Nurmagomedov. He then faced Gaethje, who, I mean, he was all over Gaethje, but Gaethje's just psychotic attitude to fighting just prevailed and managed to stop him in round 2. And then he had the loss to Elkins, where he started strong and ultimately got choked out in round 2. And then he's had the Fili and Lobov fights, which just weren't overly impressive performances from him. He squeaked the Fili one, and Lobov he clearly won, but 2 rounds to 1. And now he's taking on Josh Emmett, so it's going to be a stand-up fight. So I think Emmett will probably try and get his wrestling going at some point, but I can't see him having much success with the wrestling. And even if he can get Michael down, I don't really know if he can keep Michael down. He's never shown that kind of competent side of his grappling. I think that will be the game plan. Alpha male are familiar with Michael. Back-to-back fighters faced him, Fili and Elkins, so you know they're going to be familiar game planning for him. Fili did mix in the takedowns, but I just think his grappling and control is a bit better, and he's a bit more of a submission threat, Fili, as opposed to Emmett, who is kind of more tries to physical the takedowns and the top control. I'm just not sure how much joy I have. So if this comes down to a fight on the feet, I've got to favour MJ. He's got the big reach advantage. He's got the better striking. Emmett does load up a bit. It can crack Emmett. I'm just seeing if has Michael ever been knocked out. Gaethje, but that was more of a he just gassed, and it was more an accumulation kind of stoppage. If Emmett's going to take him out with strikes, it's going to be more like kind of one shot kind of thing. I don't think he has, so he's really, really durable, is Michael. And his stand-up style is more conducive to winning decisions. He is the better fundamental striker. His volume's a bit higher. I think Michael's going to win a decision here. And psychologically is the big question mark for me here as well with Emmett. I just don't know what kind of state he's going to be in psychologically. Is he going to, because his style as well does allow him to be hit, because he does throw wild, is he still going to be comfortable embracing that kind of fight, especially here against Michael, who can hit? So it's going to be really interesting early on just to see, especially if Michael can land early, how that affects him. Is he going to turn into a wrestler? You know, I mean, would he wrestle just from the off here? Would he just change his style up completely and not want to get hit anymore? It's, you know, or is that going to happen after he gets hit a couple of times and he has some flashbacks, or maybe he feels something in his face? Yeah, I've got to go Michael here. He's hard to trust, but I mean the line is, I mean it's playable, I guess. He's -115 is Michael Johnson. So yeah, he is a flaky fighter. You don't want to bet him as a favourite or a sizable favourite, but that isn't the case here. So at -115, you bet if you are betting someone who can be considered flaky. I mean, at least you're not betting them as a favourite, because I do favour Michael here. You know, I think he is a solid fighter. I just do have in the back of my mind, as I've said, is he slowing down a little bit? But there's question marks over Emmett that are more significant for me here, so I have to go with Michael, probably to win a decision. I hope it's a decision. I don't want to see any kind of relapse with Emmett's face or anything here. But yeah, I'm going to pick Michael Johnson to win a decision here. Co-main event is in the men's middleweight division. David Branch taking on Norway's Jack Hermansson. Quick look over the stats, and the same height, 6'1", 1 inch reach advantage for Branch. Both orthodox. Hermansson a lot younger, but 7 years younger. He lands nearly 5 significant strikes per minute, does Hermansson. David is just up at over 1.5. Absorb a similar amount, both under 2. Branch averages over 2.5 takedowns per 15 minutes. Hermansson just over 2. Hermansson takedown accuracy 46%. Branch 32. Branch takedown defense 42%. Hermansson 73%. So if we have a quick look over Hermansson's record, made his UFC debut back in 2016 against Scott Askham, won a decision, lost to Cesar Ferreira. Got outstruck in that fight. Ferreira kept him on the outside, hit takedowns, and ultimately locked up that arm triangle choke in the second round. He then had wins over Alex Nicholson and Brad Scott. Lost to Thiago Santos, got stopped at the end of the first round, and then he's coming off wins over Taddy's latest fight where he showed a lot of heart. It looked like he was going to lose in that fight. Hermansson, he hurt his rib or something. Looked like it was game, set and match, but he managed to turn it around and still put out the win in round 3. Showed amazing heart there. And then he's coming off a really impressive quick win over Gerald Meerschaert. David Branch, not been in the UFC too long. Made his debut against Krzysztof Jotko, won a split decision. Very boring affair, a lot of cage hugging, not a lot happened in that fight. Got taken out by Luke Rockhold in his next fight. Had Luke in trouble in the first round, had him hurt, but Luke managed to survive, and as soon as Luke got him down, that was all she wrote. And Luke's a monster from top position, and yeah, Branch just kind of quit. Thiago Santos knocked Thiago out in round 1. Really impressive fight. I think that's what sent Thiago up to light heavyweight. And then he's coming off the loss to Jared Cannonier. Couldn't really get Jared down. Took him down a few times in round 1, but just couldn't keep him down, and came out and got stopped in round 2. So been pretty up and down for Branch so far. It's a hard fight to call. I mean, Branch, he's only had 4 fights in the UFC, but he's not had any easy fights. I mean, Krzysztof Jotko's on a bit of a lull, but he's a decent fighter. Luke Rockhold's a beast. Thiago Santos is a beast, and Jared Cannonier's a beast. So he's not had an easy run. Jack Hermansson, he's lost to Santos and he's lost to Ferreira, but you know, otherwise he's not had a bad run. Scott Askham, Alex Nicholson, Brad Scott. If you're going to go anywhere in the UFC, you need to be beating them guys. Beat Tao's latest, who is definitely, well, he's just retired in fact, but it definitely wasn't the same latest that we saw maybe take on Bisping a couple of years earlier. And then Gerald Meerschaert, who is, you know, he's lower level kind of UFC caliber. So he's not really had a breakout win. He's the 2 times he's stepped up, I would say, against Thiago and Ferreira, he's lost. So it's an interesting fight, this one. David Branch is definitely the more decorated jiu-jitsu player, but he is up there in age. On the feet, hard for me to get a read. Hermansson's definitely got the volume advantage on the feet, and I don't really think Branch is a particularly big. I mean, I know he knocked out Thiago Santos, but Santos' chin at middleweight was just always questionable. I think it's far better at light heavyweight. He did hurt Luke Rockhold as well, so maybe I'm doing him a disservice by saying he's got no power now. And again, I know Luke's not got the best chin, but still had him hurt. But prior to that, yeah, just plied his trade really in WSOF. Beat kind of a number of ex-UFC guys. Kind of couldn't cut it in the UFC. It's a really hard fight to call. If we look at the odds, we've got Branch as a slight underdog, plus 105. They're both really good from... I mean, Hermansson's really good from top control. That's his kind of specialist area, is he's really good on top. Is he going to be as good on top against someone like Branch if he can get on top? So it's hard to know. We have seen Luke Rockhold finish him, but Hermansson isn't as good as Luke Rockhold. So this is a hard fight for me to call. I'm probably going to go with Hermansson. I think he's got the more upside. He's the younger guy. Is there a little bit of quitting Branch as well? Kind of not in love with the way he quit against Rockhold. Not in love with the Cannonair loss either. Don't know if he folded a little bit in both fights and just, you know, kind of had a bit of adversity and he just gave in. So Hermansson showed a lot of grit against Lattis, so I can see this being a very competitive fight. I do favour Hermansson standing. I just think he's got the higher volume. If he does end up on the bottom though, it could be dangerous for him. Branch is very solid. I think he's a black belt under Renzo Gracie, so solid grappler. How will he cope with the European on top of him? Will he be able to survive? Or Jack is really strong from top. I'm going to go with Jack. I just think on the feet I favour him, and I wouldn't be shocked if he can get top control here. And it's MMA, not grappling, and do some damage from top. So I'm going to go with the Joker to start building a little bit of momentum here, and get another win in the UFC. And I'd class it as the best win of his UFC career. Now to the main event. Fight everyone's been waiting for. The Just Bleed gods have ordered Edson Barboza to take on Justin Gaethje in the men's lightweight division. Quick look over the stats. Both same height, 5'11". Barboza's got a 5-inch reach advantage. Both fight out of the orthodox stance. Barboza's a couple of years older. Barboza lands 4 significant strikes per minute. Surprised it's not higher than that. Justin Gaethje is up at 8.5. That is absolutely crazy. Strikes absorbed. So Barboza's at 4. Justin Gaethje is at 10. My God. The takedowns. Justin Gaethje, well, according to these, hasn't hit a takedown in the UFC. Barboza isn't. Yeah, that's just... I've seen some people talk about maybe he'll use his wrestling here, but he's not going to. He's talking about having a few fights left. He wants to be entertaining. He's not going to wrestle. This is going to be an absolute stand-up war. It's not the easiest fight to be confident in because Gaethje is just a complete psycho. Barboza's at American Top Team now. Had his first fight under American Top Team with Dan Hooker, and that fight was absolutely brutal. Dan Hooker's corner should have pulled him out of that fight. This really bad cornering. I don't know why they let him go back out for that beating. I mean, throw the towel in. I don't know if you can throw the towel in, but just jump in the cage, whatever, get him disqualified. The ref should have... I think everyone involved in that, allowing that fight to continue, needs to take a good hard look at themselves. Prior to that fight, he was coming off back-to-back losses, but completely different stylistic matches. Khabib and Kevin Lee just wrestle-fucked him, basically. He did take a lot of damage in those 2 fights, though. Now, it didn't rear its head against Dan Hooker because it was all one-way traffic, but I do wonder if that has taken something out of Barboza in terms of his ability to absorb punishment. Now, there was question marks over Barboza's chin, and I admit I was one of them, but it seems to have been dispelled because just haven't really seen him in trouble. Now, I say there was question marks over his chin. We are going back a long way here. He got rocked by
Jamie Varner really badly, where he got stopped, and then he got rocked really badly by Danny Castillo. Managed to survive and actually win the fight. And then Donald Cerrone dropped him with a jab, but we haven't really seen any, from memory, I don't think we've seen any suspect chin issue since then, and that Cerrone fight was 5 years ago. So I've kind of got over the has Barboza got a dodgy chin question. Some of you might not even remember it because we're going back so long, but there was a period where it seemed that he was a bit chinny, but his chin's been fine since. Barboza, absolute dynamo on the feet. Just go and watch his last fight to see what the guy can do on the feet. Dangerous as hell. Vicious kicks. Best kicks in MMA for me. Excellent athlete. I expected him to implement the calf kicks because it's an American top team forte, is the calf kicks. I was expecting that against Hooker. I don't think he used them from memory. Probably be wise to start using them here because it's such an effective kick, and with the way Barboza kicks, I'm pretty confident you'd only need to land a few of them flush and your leg is going to be in huge jeopardy. So I'm expecting him to use that here to try and thwart Gaethje's movement. Historically, how Barboza has struggled is when he's been kind of walked down. Michael Johnson kept very heavy pressure to win a decision on him. Tony Ferguson, whose style is the most similar to Justin Gaethje. I mean, they're not similar in a sense, but just in terms of the insane pressure and durability they bring, Tony Ferguson's the most comparable opponent. Now, yeah, I mean, Barboza won the first round. It was very competitive, but Tony just kept coming and coming, and he seemed to start to break Barboza. He made Barboza shoot on him, which is never a good idea against Tony with his series of front headlock chokes. But for Edson Barboza to be shooting, you know he's starting to wilt. He did start to wilt under that crazy Ferguson pressure. He was also struggling against Dariush. Dariush brought a lot of pressure in their fight, and I remember I bet Barboza in that fight, and I thought my bet was lost, and then he pulled that flying knee out of nowhere. So the way to beat Barboza is by pressuring him, and Gaethje is going to bring the pressure. The problem with Gaethje compared to the likes of Michael Johnson, Tony Ferguson and Dariush is he's fundamentally he's just not as good as them in terms of his defense, in terms of his movement, in terms of his kind of actual striking arsenal. He's just a bit of a Terminator that moves forward and just throws shots. He's just not as kind of diverse or as technical as them, but it's just his grittiness and toughness that if you can't put him away, he's going to keep coming. Now, this is a 5-round fight as well. So Gaethje, 19-2 record, 30 years of age. He's someone that's, remember before he made his UFC debut against Michael Johnson, I can't remember if I bet Michael or not. I think I might have, I can't remember. But you watch his fights before the UFC, and just every fight he's in big trouble. He gets rocked, he gets hurt, he gasses out, but he just keeps coming and just pulls the victories out. And Michael Johnson, he was in big trouble in round 1, but Michael just couldn't put him away, and he kept coming and coming, and he just eventually, the pressure just folded Michael. Eddie Alvarez, back and forth war, and Eddie actually took him out in round 3. Dustin Poirier, back and forth war. I remember at one point it looked like Poirier was going to quit. I remember him, I think he looked at his corner, and it really looked, I remember thinking if you'd bet Dustin Poirier, you'd be thinking your bet's done. But Poirier pulled it out of the bag and stopped him in the 4th round, and then he's coming off the quick win over James Vick. Just one shot killed him in the 1st round. So for me, it's, I mean, the path to victory here for Gaethje is he's just going to have to walk through hell, fire and brimstone and hope Barboza starts to break, which is possible because we have seen it happen before. We saw it happen against Ferguson, but man, Gaethje's just taken so much punishment even before the UFC, and now he's actually stepped up a level. He's getting finished. Eddie Alvarez finished him. Dustin Poirier finished him. I just see Barboza landing something big. Now, also, just to point out, Justin Gaethje has really, really good low kicks himself. Real power in them. But it's never a good idea. I mean, the saying goes, don't hook with a hooker. And I think you can say don't leg kick with a leg kicker. And as good as Gaethje and powerful as Gaethje's leg kicks are, good luck trading leg kicks or kicks in any sense with Edson Barboza. I don't think you're going to win that war. And as I said, I'm keen to see if Barboza brings out the calf kicks here, because that's going to really wreck Justin Gaethje's life if he does. Yeah, I've got to go Barboza. I think Gaethje's just going to be there to be styled upon. Barboza's going to be landing huge. I wouldn't be surprised if he looks a bit like the Dan Hooker fight. I just think he's going to be able to unload on him. I mean, Gaethje's tough, but like I said, we've seen him cracked a couple of times in the UFC, so he can be knocked out. Barboza isn't the biggest puncher in terms of with his hands, unlike Alvarez and Poirier, who both have tremendous power with their hands. But it's a different assault that's going to be coming. His legs are going to take a beating. Potentially the calves are going to take a beating. The body's going to take a beating. And his head's there to be hit, so Barboza's going to be hitting him in the head as well. So this guy's going to be taking punishment on his legs, his body and his head, and I think it's just going to crumple him. And you know, Barboza for low percentage stuff like flying knees, spinning heel kicks, spinning wheel kicks, this guy has probably the highest ratio of actually landing stuff like that, and against someone as defensively flawed as Gaethje, would not shock me if he landed something. So I think eventually he's going to put him down. I think just the overall assault's going to be too much, and yeah, I just can't see him being able to walk through this assault. I think his movement's going to get slowed down. His legs going to be hurting. His body's going to be hurting. I mean, it's hard to back Barboza. It's dropped a little bit. He's minus 155 now. I mean, it's hard to be overly confident, because Gaethje's such a warrior, and he will keep coming until his body literally stops. And Barboza, you know, he can be susceptible to immense pressure, and Gaethje is going to bring immense pressure, but I just don't think he's not Tony Ferguson. He hasn't got that. I mean, Ferguson's got that great submission threat as well, which Gaethje doesn't have. But if you do see Barboza shoot, then you know you're in big trouble if you're on Barboza. But I just think Gaethje is just going to get beaten up really bad. That eventually he gasses as well, which I briefly mentioned. He does slow down in fights. Barboza's got a really good gas tank. You can keep throwing. I don't think we've seen Barboza go 5 rounds before, but he's had some intensive 3-round fights where he keeps coming with his firepower, and yeah, he's got decent movement as well. And you know, is Gaethje even going to be cute enough to be able to kind of cut Barboza off and use that forward pressure? I have to go Barboza to win here. I think he's going to stop Gaethje inside the distance. What is the inside the distance? Oh, minus 475. Yeah, it's not playable. But to be fair, I think Barboza is probably bettable. Minus 155. I don't think that's a bad line. It's just a hard fight to be confident in, just because it's Justin Gaethje and guy's a complete lunatic. But yeah, the arsenal that Barboza brings is far more varied than what Poirier and Alvarez bring, who pretty much attack solely with their hands. Barboza uses everything, all 8 weapons, particularly the legs, particularly the hands, particularly the knees. and I just think it will slow Gaethje down, and I think it's going to be a kind of accumulative type stoppage, and I hope Gaethje's corner are generous enough to stop this if it is becoming too one-sided, because I can see this being a bit like the Dan Hooker fight. Gaethje may be having a bit more success than Hooker had, but ultimately, yeah, I'm going with Barboza here. So that wraps up the picks for this week, guys. Just to remind you, if you do bet £100 per unit or $100 per unit, you would be £5,300 or dollars up with pro MMA betting in 2019. That's with pre-bets combined and live betting. We are 8-1 on pre-betting UFC events in 2019, so we're on a really solid roll. Check out the website prommmabetting.com, Twitter at prommmabetting, and please hit the subscribe button on the YouTube channel, and I'll be back in 2 weeks time. We've actually got a week off, thank God, for UFC 236.